Okay. Let's do 15 minutes of a reading stream. I can read, maybe finish a chapter by then. All right, let me change the tags on here. Unboxing is done. So we're gonna put book and lock. And I'm gonna change this to reading fun because we're gonna have a lot of fun reading. All right, reading fun, and then we're gonna change the view so you guys can see Tommy Rice, who I ran into at LA Comic Con to sign my book. Yeah, that's Tommy Rice. I don't know if he'll make a sound command for my channel. If he wants to make one, if he thinks there's something that my channel needs. So, I don't have that command in my channel, however. Yes, you saw Teal's picture. Cute Teal. He's as sweet and adorable in person as he is on his streams. Alright, now I have to remember where we were, so I might have to backtrack a little. I think we were in chapter 3, in the ice well. Walker was about to... No, we're in chapter 4. The Fortress of Antstone, but then we went back to the ice wall. And I believe Walker was about to make his very heroic escape from his captivity. Oh, Halbert has a medical degree. He's Dr. Halbert now. Okay. So back to the escape. The stunned recognition of a complete tempest unleashed, Walker looked the monstrous warrior with his glowing golden eyes and black tattoos that were not there before. The guard couldn't fathom what he saw. Rage, a terror of legend, stood before him. He ducked back down, flinching as he slammed the slit shut. The alarm blared. The prisoner is free. Bring the ogres. The slab is compromised. Walker heard this over the intercom and looked at the guard in the room above him. Quickly sizing up his location, he realized the best way off the slab was through the door, but he had another idea. Shard arrows, he heard the call in the background. He needed to hear more clearly as the alarm was deafening and annoying. He pointed his Magnus-covered hand toward the broken collar. With a single gesture, the metal launched toward the speaker, guided by his power. It sliced into the still noise in the background. It sliced into the speaker, the metal cutting it in half as it stuck in the mountain. There was still noise in the background, but at least he didn't have to suffer through the blaring from that speaker. Walker looked down around the floor, then up the walls of the slab. Judging his trajectory, he started running toward the bridge. Midway across, he jumped, launching himself to a protruding ledge below the observation room. He reached out for the ledge, slamming against the wall and grunting with pain as he caught it with his fingers. His muscles hadn't yet recovered from the weight of the boulders, but he held on, pulling himself up. There were jutting edges and footholds in the rock. He grabbed one and started to scale the wall toward the observation room. The legionnaire above couldn't see where the prisoner had jumped to, only that he had. He tried to look over the edge, but couldn't see without leaning his head out over the chasm. He waited, holding his rifle at the opening. He was nervous and shaking. A Spartan had escaped. He waited, sweat running down his purple face, thoughts of fear and doubt creeping into his psyche. The masters would be furious that there was an insane, tattooed giant outside the window. He froze in fear. His heart pounded for what seemed like hours. Then he listened. He hadn't heard anything for a few moments. A few more went by, and slowly the fear keeping him locked in place eased. He crouched down as he moved toward the lookout window, listening. Still nothing. Maybe he fell, he thought. Yes, he had to have fallen. The legionnaire found his nerve and leaned over the edge, sticking the barrel of his weapon over as a warning and firing a shot. Still nothing. He leaned out slowly, looking for the giant, eyes wide. He fell, he decided, as he let out his breath. A huge tattooed hand grabbed him by the collar, and he yelped as he was pulled out of the room. Okay, we've seen this in every movie. There's a guy underneath the eaves, the lip of wherever it is, and you just see a big hand like reach out and like grab the guy and yank him over the wall. It's like standard. You know that happens. Walker tossed the soldier into the abyss, pulling himself up over the ledge. He leapt into the observation room, landing lightly for someone of his size. He made his way to the control console and hit the button that silenced the alarm in the rest of the prison. Icewell became silent, except for the mustering of the guards outside. He released his hold on the Magnus, and his smirk slowly faded back into his skin. He took a moment of respite. Looking around the room, he found a map of the prison on the wall. He studied the layout, seeking the best way out. There, he pointed. Looking out at a small window of the room, down to the outside entrance of the slab cell door, he noticed legionnaires were pouring down the corridor. They didn't know he had made it off the slab yet. He saw that outside the slab door was a vestibule that the corridors led into. It seemed the Razium were planning on holding their position in front of the entrance, letting him come out to greet them. Walker watched from the small window of the room as the Legionnaire commander walked through the press. He stopped and hesitated, then yelled at the frightened guard at the door, who refused to stand up, still holding his rifle tightly in a fetal position. Walker opened the observation room door, quietly slipping out to the small landing. He looked over the edge, scanning the Razium below as he found his target. The Legionnaire commander put his finger to an earpiece and was giving orders. He stopped talking as he felt eyes on him. Walker watched as he turned to look up directly at him. "Stop him! There!" he yelled, pointing. "Bring him down while he is weakened." The commander moved behind his men, pointing and yelling in his earpiece as he did. "He is out! Bring out the ogres! We must protect the emissary." The other legionnaires looked up at the commander's cry of alarm. They saw Walker and froze, with a look of surprise and utter cowardice on their faces. Alright, let's run the battle, and we'll come back. I can only have like a couple pages, and then we can finish chapter 4. Right. How are you doing for peoples? Thank you, RB, for placing Burly Beardo, Suyen. I think we lost CU. Halbert and Blauschwede. I love the names. I have to say the names all the time. All right. Let's do a haste and good luck. I think we have numbers on our side. We're going to make this one. Just the big burly dudes. Just two more. We're almost done. One more. Look at that. We got it. And Halbert to get some bomber scrolls. GG's. Still have not got my buffing. Okay. What the heck can I do? I think I will go with Centurion for the next one to try and get my buffing. So I am going to need to be surrounded by Centurions. Oh yeah, the Templar. But maybe for the next one. I got a good set of buffing with my Centurion on the player account, I think. There we go. Hopefully it'll do something. Defense buffs, yeah. Alright. I'll do Templar next one. Just I don't want to get the healing one, and I don't know if healing counts as buffing. Like, I think it should, but maybe they're just specific about it. We got this. Are the captions working? I don't think they're working this time around. They're misbehaving. Alright, so Walker is freaking everybody out because he's ready to escape. The commander yelled more loudly, and their training kicked in. As one, they lifted their weapons toward the warrior above them. The barrels erupted in gunfire, but it was too late. Walker had already started moving. He leapt off the landing above them, dark tattoos returning to his skin. He's using the Magnus again. Alright, see ya. Now, instead of merely a guide for listening to the oar, the Magnus flowed into him, hardening his skin. The tattoo marks spread in their usual patterns, turning from flesh to ink black as they set on his muscled body. As he flew, he repelled bullets with his left hand, pulling his right fist back as it lit with a blue nimbus of power. The bullets he couldn't stop were bouncing off his hardened flesh as he hurtled toward them. The legionnaires started to lose their nerve and scattered, realizing their weapons were having no effect as the tattooed giant came flying toward them. The commander tried to maintain control by bullying and threatening the men as they started to run, cries of panic rising from their voices. Walker yelled a battle cry as he flew through the air, and with a deafening sound of hundreds simultaneous thunderbolts striking, He landed in the middle of them, slamming his powered fists on the ground and releasing the Magnus into it. The blue power of the tectonic punch pulsed through the stone floor, exploding outward with concussive force. The impact created a crater that threw guards, dust, and debris in every direction. It was over before it had begun. Walker was still on one knee in the middle of the crater. Slowly he rose, checking for anyone still standing. Dust from the blow floated around him, gathering on the shapes lying on the floor. He flexed his hand, checking it for injury, then looked back to the floor. All the Razium were smashed or sprawled about. Even the commander that had spotted him was down. Walker shook his head to gather his wits. The release of the Magnus had taken a lot out of him. The marks faded back into his skin as he checked a few more of the downed legionnaires. He was satisfied that they were not a problem, but he needed to move. Kristen must be going into lockdown, he thought, as he hurried through the corridors. He jogged the way that the soldiers had come from, ducking under a metal door that was closing. He continued down the corridor, mentally following the map from the observation room as he headed toward the main area of the prison. A few floors later, he stopped to gather himself. Leaning against the rock wall, he listened to the yelling voices and thumps of boots that joined in the collage of sounds and commotion he was hearing in the area above him. He hadn't been able to gather his power back after the jailbreak. It had taken too much out of him, and he needed rest, but he couldn't stop yet. He took a breath, steadied himself, and continued moving. He knew he was getting closer to the top as he made his way through the next door. It led to a long carved hallway that was sloped, cut from the rock of the mountain. It led upward toward an open door, a light shining through. All the other doors he had tried to go through had been closed or locked, and it seemed he was being guided toward a certain destination. It was a trap, and he knew it. The Ulfwan know how to build them in case of escape, he was thinking as he slowed at the top of the incline. Walker looked out into the open area that had guards running across bridges and gantries above. Looking from the threshold's shadow, he saw the first line of legionnaires. They were human and Razium, well over 30 strong, all bearing wickedly barbed crossbows. The crossbows held charred arrows. On the tips were jagged heads that could puncture most flesh and stay put firmly in the body of the creature they hit. They wouldn't kill, but would weaken the individual, slowly bleeding the target until all struggle ceased. The tormentors used these in most prisms of the Razium. The reasoning being, why kill it with bullets when you can torture it with blades? The fear of shard arrows was enough to subdue most prisoners, but Walker wasn't most prisoners. He rolled his shoulders, feeling the Magnus in him. He sat for a few minutes, watching the legionnaires. He could feel his power returning. The runes of this place were helping him to heal quicker. It was a good thing, too. He wasn't sure he could manage this much power in his condition. He sighed and blinked away his exhaustion and thought of his duty. The prince. The fact that his freedom was at hand gave him hope. After a few moments, when he felt ready, he slowly stood and stepped out from the doorway into the open. A Razium sergeant spotted him. "There," the sergeant yelled. "Take aim." Walker jogged to meet the arrayed battle line. "Loose!" the sergeant howled, and bolts filled the air before him. Moments before they struck, Walker's body hardened as the Magnus patterns swirled across it. The tip snapped and shattered against his stone-hard skin, concentrating to keep himself impenetrable. Walker lunged with a surge of speed into the snow-packed, panicked line of archers. Into the now panicked line of archers. With no weapons but his fists, he barreled into the troops, smashing them and knocking them into each other as they fumbled between drawing blades and lining up another shot. He punched, kicked, and smashed any who were too close to him, taking out the disorganized soldiers with ease. With no one to lead them and no orders being given, the fight ended in seconds, fear leading to panic. The last of the legionnaires turned and ran. Walker was holding a crossbow that another guard had tried to hit him with. It didn't work and had left the guard on the floor unconscious. He took the crossbow, aimed, and threw it, guiding it with the magnus. It hit the running guard in the legs, crumpling him to the floor. Walker trotted over, grabbing him by the back of his coat and lifting him up. It was the cocky, loud-mouthed sergeant who had brought him to this god-forsaken place. The sergeant was in shock of what he had just witnessed. His men had been dismantled in a matter of seconds. He was struggling to get away from the warrior he had no hope of besting, and the same look of dread he had when he saw Walker on the slab crossed his face now. His taunts of torturers and the false security of control were over. Walker stared at him through his matted hair. "I'm sorry. I didn't," Thracian was saying as he started to cry. Walker didn't let him finish. "Where is my belt?" he asked harshly, shaking the man. What?" Thracian asked, pleading back. "When you brought me here, where did you take my things? Where is my gear? My belt?" Walker bellowed. The armory," Thracian stuttered. "It's through the passage," he said, pointing to a door in the wall. "It leads up. You can't miss it." He looked back to Walker, grimacing. "Are you going to let me go?" Walker looked at the sniveling wretch, his purple skin covered in sweat. "Yes." Relief flooded the sergeant's face, and he almost grinned, before fear replaced it just as quickly as Walker carried him over to the crevice that led down into the prison. Thracian shrieked, trying to get away. With a toss, Walker cast him down into the pit, his screams lost to the inky blackness until he hit a ledge with a thud, stopping his fall. Walker was breathing hard. The magnus was taking its toll and he felt dizzy. He knew he needed to rest. The magnus receded. Even after all this time, he realized he still hadn't fully healed from the weapons of the LOK. The betrayal had taken a lot from him. He pushed the thought of losing his friends and powers from his mind. They will pay, but first I need to get out of here, he thought. Hearing more guards moving in the corridor above, he left, jogging through the passage door. Chapter 5, Icewell Prison. Sagar Mountains, Ultima Prime. Quick hydration. Got a smoothie. The throat to make sure I can keep going because I can already feel it. Walker moved quickly through the mountain fortress. He wasn't sure how old his intel was, though he knew he was close to running out of time on whatever it was the Thracian had planned. Finding the armory, he entered carefully and started looking around the room, searching for his items. It was stocked well enough to outfit a small squad, but most of it consisted of mundane weapons and armor. He didn't see his weapons, coat, or hooded cloak, but continued to look frantically. Then he felt it, set on a hook across the room under other belts and straps. Walker saw what he was looking for, his utility pouches. He picked up the dark leather belt almost nostalgically, checking the arcanium-plated pouches. As he got to the largest one, he entered a quick code on its rune-covered plate, then opened it. He reached in and smiled. "There you are, old friend," he said aloud, a relieved look on his face. Walker patted the large pouch, then closed and latched it, pulling it around his waist. He found a couple of old pistols and a shotgun with ammo, loaded them, and tucked the guns into his pants. He also found a shirt that fit and changed. He kept looking for someone to walk in on him, thinking it was strange that no one had found him yet, but he knew that they would be mustering their strength. Let them prepare as much as they'd like, he thought. He checked the hall as he left the room. On his way through the maze that led through the entrance of Icewell, he was met with some resistance. In the quick engagements, he dispatched several small squads using the guns from the armory as he tried to conserve what energy he had left. He used the Magnus only when needed, saving his power for the main battle he knew was yet to come. He was now out of ammo, but the weapons had helped. He hated using such dishonorable items, but conserving the Magnus had allowed him to heal slightly, and he was feeling better, more like himself. He finally reached a huge upper chamber that held the emissary. He was Erasium, a traitor, though this one was a diplomat who had vital information and the whereabouts of the prince. Walker needed that information, and he would have it. He had made it to the main holder of the fortress and crouched just out of sight in the corridor off to the side, slightly hidden in the shadows. He surveyed the amazingly crafted domed and pillared chamber. It was monstrous. He didn't think something this big could be constructed inside a mountain. He knew of the entire fortress that could be fit in the incredibly high vaulted ceilings and large 1,000-yard spaces hewn from the stone. Large, intricately carved pillars were situated every 100 yards or so. Paths for hauling weapons and slaves had been built, running through them. He watched from his hiding place, trying to gain information on the warriors he was about to engage. In front of him was a chasm. The only way across was a wide, rail-less steel bridge that extended from either side of the chasm and tapered down, connecting in the middle. There was a mechanism to open and close the bridge so that either side could be pulled back towards its own ledge, disconnecting the bridge and taking away the only route across for someone on the wrong side, which he was. Walker thought it strange that it had been left connected. He pulled a pair of field glasses he had in his belt and looked across the crevasse. He saw small trucks delivering weapons and soldiers running under orders of their masters. Then he saw what he was to face and stopped wondering why the bridge was intact. They wanted him alive. He watched the torture masters whipping the Ulfwand to task, arranging the huge brutes in lines in front of the bridge. Looking past the ogres, he saw other soldiers, and behind them in the distance were the crow's nest gun emplacements of the main hall. They were built on either side of the huge doors that led out of the prison, a few hundred yards behind the small army. There were also tunnels leading to the gun emplacements by the doors. These tunnels allowed the legionnaires to move freely from inside the caverner's hall to the outside ramparts, giving them the freedom to use their weapons on whatever threatened them. It didn't matter if it was an army attacking from the outside or a prison riot within. They could deal with either. After sizing up his opponents, Walker glanced the middle of the battle lines behind the Ulthuan, and there he saw the emissary. Beside him was the commander of the prison, a fat Razium who was bellowing orders to others as he looped his hums under his large belt. The arrogance of him stank. He seemed like he was going through a drill rather than fighting a warrior, by the way he carried on with the emissary. The emissary could have left at any time, but he had wanted to stay. He was confident in his safety, standing behind 3 lines of ogre berserkers. He seemed to be enjoying himself, as if this were a battle to watch for fun, like the wars of the old southern stories. The emissary's light purple skin was shiny, and in contrast to the deep amethyst wool cloak, dark uniform, and armor he wore. Walker scanned back to the Ulthuan ogres. Brutish things, each one over 7 feet tall and bulkier than 4 muscled men. The poor creatures had been lobotomized, turned into slaves, and were not the regal thinkers and craftsmen they normally would have been. Walker pitied them. They were Ulthuan no more. They were slavering things, having been turned into berserkers, drooling and braying, the once proud creatures debased and shackled. Each wore bracelets and headgear that pumped toxins and strength cocktails into them, making already formidable creatures into unstoppable monsters. Walker knew what he had to do, but fighting these creatures would not be honorable and would take much of his power, maybe too much. He had to push through. His people and his prince counted on him, and he would not let them down, not again. He paused as he thought back to how he had gotten to this place and the events that had led to it. His face grimaced as he thought about it. His eyes teared slightly. Walker bit his lip in a snarl of frustration. The battle rage took its place. He wasn't about to let this stop him now, for he had come too far, and he would not die here. Walker grit his teeth, stood, and walked out of the shadows. Chapter 5 was a short chapter. Chapter 6. The Commander's Birthday. Andstone Fortress, Atlantioch Province of the Federation, Continent of Ultima Thule. The carriages and wagons came over the hill toward the city as the sun was just starting to set. Beautiful reds and violets made the clouds look like floating gold-lined cotton. Lincoln looked out over the dream world seen toward the castle fortress. Home, and it looks as if they are almost ready for tonight, Uncle. He could see the people of the huge city on the ramparts, hanging banners and balloons. As they drew closer, they could tell everyone was in a hurry. There was music in the background as the bands were readying their instruments. Chefs and bakers were bringing out their delicacies, and others were waiting for their newly arrived caravan to deliver the vegetables they needed to finish the meals. The shops of the city were closing, and all were moving fast, trying to get ready for the night's extravaganza. Even the normally stern portcullis guards had big grins on their faces for the upcoming party. Though it was a fortress, balloons, party accessories, and the flags of the surrounding cities had been hung on the walls, welcoming the neighboring peoples to the joyous celebration. Of course, their normal 60 caliber guns on the walls' battlements were still out, and the huge 419 cannons on the back towers and on the walls looked as ominous as always. The atmosphere was different. Even the trionic force fields were down as they rode through the gates. Lincoln didn't remember the last time he had seen that. Fields were always up. They were Rasium technology, apparently what the aliens used on their ships for space travel, but a modified version for large or rich castles. They keep the city safe from ordnance and ballistic fire and could detect incoming object strength to stop them before impact. The fields were an amazing piece of technology. Master Mechanic Bohr had told Lincoln about them in his studies of alien electronics, but he hadn't listened fully. Still, it was cool to see them in action. Lincoln looked at Matthias. The fields are down, he stated more than asked as they rode through the main gate. Yes, it's easier for visitors to arrive. I don't like it, but I think we have enough security. Matthias smiled at Lincoln. For anything to get near here, it would have to be invisible. Chuckled. Lincoln smiled back as they entered the fortress. It was the commander's birthday, and Matthias was not ready for his 55th. He didn't look that old anyway, Lincoln thought as he studied his uncle. Matthias had said that the prince made too much of his birthday, and that it was time spent that should be about getting himself ready to take the mantle of his birth, going to learn from the council in the White City. Though that had to remain a secret for a little while longer. Anyway, no one, especially Lincoln, was going to let Matthias get out of celebrating his birthday. They had made arrangements, and in all 4 immediate cities were invited, including soldiers from the large southern staging armory of Fort Payne. The large gathering would also give the neighboring leaders a chance to meet and discuss the future of the region the next morning, but with the drinking tonight, the meeting might have to wait until the afternoon. Next week to bring about his departure to the White City to train with the Master LOKs there, and Matthias thought it would be good for him to attend this meeting and learn some diplomacy before he went. Matthias was a respected hero and head of the council for the major cities in the area. He was going to be elected to the mayoral council and a possible governorship, though he had resisted the post originally, thinking it would draw too much attention to them and to Anstone. However, the people of the area loved Matthias, and the higher-ranking leaders wanted to get behind the old commander. This party was a great way to do it and give him the push he needed for election. Matthias had finally relented, with Lincoln leaving the next week. He wouldn't have to worry about anyone finding out who the boy really was. Also, with the war drawing closer, Matthias knew he would help with the leadership of the southern area. Lincoln's attention switched back to the movement around them, the people of the city going to and fro. He loved coming home after a day out. Whether hunting, gathering, or playing, it was always fun to return to the city and the fortress, his home for almost as long as he could remember. The walls were huge and wondrous, although Lincoln had read about and seen pictures of the large metropolis capitals. He couldn't fathom them being bigger than this. He loved to look up as they rode through the fortress, watching the walls go by overhead and seeing the towers in the background. It made him feel safe. As they rode down the cobbled streets, Lincoln saw that the rounded street lamps hadn't come on yet, but he knew they would soon, as night was getting closer. They made their way down the streets of the city's inner walls and past the market area by the tallest buildings and apartments. As they neared the inner castle, Lincoln could see the huge Zeppelin-style warships, Skylands, docked by the air bay. He was excited because he would be riding in it next week, when he went to the White City. The airship was amazing to look upon, the grandeur of it exhilarating, especially now with the huge streamers that had been attached to it. A classic Carrack battleship outlined in gold that had been transformed into a sleek airship. It's almost battle time, so let's head it over there really quick. And then we'll run the last battle. I think my hype from the laptop is finally calming down now that I'm reading and chilling out. So, yeah, this will be the last battle. I'll finish reading the next chapter. How are you still awake, RB? This is long past your bedtime. Although I know it's, you know, weekend and can stay up as long as you want, but still, I appreciate you being here. Or at least posting, posting units. Hopefully you're in bed with your phone. That will be me probably in half an hour. All right. All right, let's give us some stronghold, and hopefully that'll help also to boost the armored units that I'm trying to buff. All right, good luck, everybody. The numbers are holding. Alright, enemy numbers are starting to come down. We're even. Uh-oh. We're losing people. Oh my god, where's the mummy going? Oh, there it is. Alright, they outnumber us. Hopefully we can take him out quickly. I think so. Is that Jason? That's Neon Halo's unit. Oh, it's Paladin too. Yay! Boom. And I got one buffing assist, so the Paladin worked. Okay, I will run the last battle for tonight. Congrats, RB. You got some crowns and halberd. You got a barbarian scroll. So let me start the last battle. And the last battle is the skin chest. I don't know if we'll get it, but we will certainly try. Alright, let me place my Templar. Over here. Yep, yep, yep. Alright, let's see if we can get through the party for Matthias's birthday. Young children ran beside them and waved as they rode through the city and up to the front of the huge main entrance of the castle. They were greeted by the royal retainers who helped unload materials from the wagons. Matthias started talking and directing the men. I think the portents might be towards Red Wedding, because I think they spotted something in the distance, and I think it was one of the dragons that was probably spying on them. So I don't know if Red Wedding or like barbecue is a possibility. Lincoln hopped down, saying hello to the younger kids and tossing them a few of the apples he had gathered. He smiled as their faces lit up from the gift. Lincoln watched one of the smaller girls tear up when she couldn't catch an apple. He went to her and bent down. "Don't worry," he said to her, and an apple appeared in his hand. Her eyes widened at the trick. Lincoln winked, handing the girl her own special apple. "Shh," he whispered, putting his finger to his lips. She smiled and nodded, turning and running off with her prize. Lincoln stood watching her run and was greeted by a very round woman, pretty in the face, but rounder in the hips. He nodded cordially, handing her the bag of apples. Her small hand pinched his cheek. "Thank you, sir," she said, and turned to Matthias, yelling something. Lincoln reached up to his cheek. Ouch, he thought. Man, she has a grip. He turned back to the festivities. It was busy. He was looking through the crowd, back at the rest of the caravan that had pulled up behind him. Lincoln saw his friend Eric jump out of one of the trucks in the rear. He waved. Eric waved back and nodded his head toward a side alley. Lincoln nodded back. Matthias had handed the reins of his huge horse to the stable hand and saw the exchange. "Well, get it out," Matthias said. Lincoln looked embarrassed. Matthias' eyebrows went up expectantly. Lincoln looked to his friend and then back to his uncle. "I know I was supposed to help you with your speech, but we have a little time and I wanted to hang out with my friends for a bit." Matthias looked over, seeing Eric waiting. "Okay, go ahead." Lincoln turned to run. Matthias halted him. "I want to talk to you before I finish my speech. You come to the study. Deal?" Lincoln's face lit up. "Deal. Thanks," he said, running off toward Eric. "You've got 40 minutes," Matthias yelled after him. "Set your wrist calm and use it to find me before this thing starts. And wash up. Don't make me send the dogs after you," Matthias said, laughing. Lincoln turned and looked over his shoulder as he grinned. "All right, Uncle. Enjoy yourself." "You're 55, he yelled back. Matthias had a huge smile on his face, and it drooped at hearing his age broadcast for all to hear. But as he watched Lincoln run off, it came back. "Silly boy," he said under his breath. Then he looked away and started giving orders, telling people what to do for the party. Lincoln turned down a side alley after Eric and ran to the barn where some of their other friends had been waiting. The barn was massive. It wasn't really a barn so much as a machine shop and storage facility. It also acted as a classroom for STEAM, electro, and agriculture classes. I guess this is their version of STEM. The young kids of Anstone knew the inner workings of it and used it as a clubhouse while not at school. It was a grand place, a makeshift hideout when they needed a quiet place and wanted to get away. Lincoln had used it a lot for that, especially recently. He was having dreams about things. He didn't know what they meant, but his powers were getting stronger, and maybe that was it. A lot was changing for him, and his place always seemed to be a nice refuge. It was one of the best places to go in the compound. The boys ran up, stopping at the front and catching their breaths. "It's about time you got here," another voice inside the barn said. A tall boy came out to greet them, smiling. "Come on, let's go," he said, and they turned to run off. Lincoln looked back toward the keep, then brought up his rune-covered wristcom, a present from his father, Matthias had told him. He missed his father. He didn't remember him as well lately. A feeling of remorse touched him, and he started to reminisce, although he couldn't quite remember what he wanted to think of. It was as if he thought he was right on the edge of his mind, but just out of reach. So he thought of his parents' faces and the few memories he had of them. He heard Eric yell for him and shook the feeling, looking again at the large strap on his wrist. A piece of exquisite design. It was gold and very ornately crafted, with runes, cogs, and other devices on it. He touched invisible keys on its side, and it began to glow around the edges as he set the device to find his uncle. Blue lights inside illuminated for a second. He locked it into place and took off after his friends. Oh, so 20 minutes, so we have time to go into chapter 7. Ambassador now. Icewell Prison, continent of Ultima Prime. "I said get in line," one of the taskmasters shouted to the berserker ogre in front of him, cracking his long barbed laser whip. The beast flinched and yelped, knowing the pain that device would bring, but he listened and got back in line. The skinny black-clad taskmaster was taking great satisfaction in the pain that he could cause and the power it gave him over these huge creatures. The taskmasters were gruesome things. They wore dark leather outfits with masks covering up. "Hi, Moon." "Good morning. Guten Morgen." They wore dark leather outfits with masks covering the upper half of their purple faces. Their suits were covered with hooked barbs and weapons that were attached to various places on the suit for easy access. Small hoses connected to vials coiled around their arms. Attached to their chests and waist, the reddish-green liquid stimulant ran through the hose to lend them strength, much like that of the ogres. Each taskmaster held a whip in one hand and some type of hooked blade in the other. They were the torturers of this place, and the sadistic nature was evident in the attire and weapons they carried. The closest one to the chasm pulled his whip back to him, coiling it as he surveyed his creatures. A surprised look followed by a nasty grin came to his face when he saw Walker step from the shadows and into the open across the chasm. "I'm doing okay. Just finishing up and winding down the stream. Did some Duolingo German. Looked at pictures from Los Angeles Comic-Con. Did some unboxing for my Cyber Monday deals. And showed off my new gaming laptop that will hopefully have me going zoom, 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 and able to play all the high graphic and demanding games that I want to play, especially Grounded. And we're just gonna finish up and read from the LOK, which I started reading through last week when I was in Los Angeles. And I got to meet this guy, the author of the book, and got him to sign pictures and took a few got him to sign the book and took a few pictures with him. Soon to be a motion picture, according to him. We'll see. He's already said he wants to play himself in the movie, play the hero so far, the Spartan paladin. Because who else? They keep talking about him as this huge dude with corded arms. Like, okay, it can only be you, right? Yeah, it'll be a very interesting scene. He even showed at his writer's block panel, he had an art scene of a possible, it's probably coming up in the book later, a high-speed bullet train, Spartan warriors working their way through, kind of like on Snowpiercer, if you've seen the movie or watched the series, and dragons, firing fireballs at the train. So it made for something pretty unbelievable, but it's in the book, and the concept in the art is pretty cool. Walker breathed deeply, the rage pulling in him. He concentrated, closing his eyes briefly. He pulled as much of the Magnus into him as he could, the power surging into his body. He loosened his neck, rolling around his shoulders as he did. His Magnus mark swirled onto him, and as the power increased, they began to glow. He opened his eyes, and they turned gold, and slowly he raised his hands towards the snarling berserkers before him, closing them into fists. Waves of power surrounded them in bluish light. He was at his limit, pulling all he could for this final stand. The lead ogre saw him and snarled, taking the action as an insult to his superiority. He alerted the others to the warrior's presence. Thank you for that stretch. I need to stretch a little bit for the last stretch, literally. And then I can read us out and go sleepy buys. And then rinse and repeat and get back here. And play some Terraria with my hubby Salur. He was busy playing Sea of Thieves with his other gaming wife. It's fine. I'm not jelly at all. The emissary was in shock at what he had just seen and pulled his magnifiers away from his widened eyes. They really are still alive, he whispered, the fear from the last time he saw a Spartan paladin in action creeping back into him. Rush him, he howled at the commander. Kill him! The commander looked surprised, but gave the order over his calm piece. As he looked to the crow's nest behind him and pointed toward the warrior, they opened fire with the slides of metal chambers and the barks of hot steel. The machine guns tore through the ground between the ogres and Walker, but little else. Walker sprinted. I'm sorry, that phrase. I'm sure he wrote that on purpose to sound like it did. He moved like a great cat, the Magnus enhancing his speed. He ran, ducking and dodging the tracers, frustrating the gunners that weren't able to hit him. Any bullets that got close, Walker repelled with his power as he charged toward the bridge. The berserker ogres couldn't be held back any longer. One bellowed, slapping a taskmaster out of the way, and charged right toward the gunfire. The others followed, their lust for pain and the toxins in their bloodstreams making them uncaring, maddened beasts. Yes, kill him! The Razium emissary screamed with evil delight as he watched ogres run on the bridge to meet the Spartan. Rockets, ordered the commander. One of the legionnaires in the crow's nest fortification stopped firing a huge machine gun. Nodding, he looked toward the other legionnaire with him. The man hefted a very ornate-looking tube onto his shoulder. Cogs and coils ran along the outside to the scope of the rocket launcher. He hit the buttons on the side, priming it, and going to his knee. He looked over the rampart down to the scene playing out below. The soldier paused. The ogres were running to face the glowing Spartan. "Sir, we will hit our own," he said as he watched the ogres. "Fire! Fire now! Don't let him cross the bridge," the commander bellowed back over the comm. "Yes, sir," the legionnaire replied, taking aim as he did the others above the doors. Walker was on the bridge, running to meet his fate, his anger giving him focus and the Magnus powering him. The ogres had made it to the bridge as well and ran toward him with reckless abandon. Walker glanced over the horde that was only hundreds of feet away. He caught flashes of distance coming from he caught flashes in the distance coming from the fortifications above and beside the huge runic doors. Rockets were flying right at him, and he saw them coming, and he realized he wasn't going to make it across before they hit. He threw his hands up, using the Magnus as the rocket streaked toward him. The rocket sputtered, flipping backward the way that they came. With a swipe of his hand, he sent one of the explosive devices into the top of the ceiling above the huge gates, detonating it. Part of the ceiling came crashing down, crushing loading trucks underneath. He curled his hand, and with another gesture, 2 more rockets flew directly back to the crow's nest, with another spinning out of control, flying through the opening of the weapons bay. It hit the wall, ricocheting, and landed in the ammunition and weapons caches located in the crow's nest inlets. Walker had stopped many rockets, but there was one he hadn't been able to halt. It hit the bridge, exploding, the force of the blast throwing him sideways and sending him sprawling toward the edge. A few of the lead ogres had gotten caught in the blast as well and were blown from the bridge. A howl of rage was brayed from the others. Seeing Walker almost fall angered the berserkers, for they hadn't yet reached him. They wanted to fight, to kill, to rip him apart, and that made them run faster. Others fell off the sides of the tapering bridge, their fellows running into them from behind their eagerness. Walker had almost gone over the edge, but had been able to slow himself enough for only his legs had slipped off. He pulled himself back up and was on his feet instantly. He spit blood, holding his ribs. His Magnus skin had protected him, but he had felt the explosion and was hurt. His bluish light was gone. Thunder boomed across the inner sanctum of the stronghold. The rockets that had landed in the ammunition of the crow's nest detonated, causing a chain reaction in the weapon's cache, igniting the full complement of cartridges, munitions, and powder. With a deafening rumble, the munitions exploded with enough force to level the mountain. The huge explosion rippled through the rock and entered the door's mechanisms, blowing them outward and off the walls. The impact killed any close by as the blast surged out, force of it knocking the commanders, emissary, legionnaires, and even some of the ogres from their feet. It leveled everything in the main hall in one huge, catastrophic detonation. The emissary was on the ground, trying to get his bearings. He spit dirt and debris as he looked around. He couldn't hear. The ringing in his ears was deafening. He felt a cold gust of wind and looked back to the fortifications. They had been ripped outward by the ammo exploding. The once impenetrable runic doors lay half-hinged on the mountain sides, fire still burning in the background. Huge pistons that had held the monstrous runic metal in place were broken and disjointed. They had been snapped like twigs at the hydraulic joints. Most of his forces lay dead or unconscious on the floor, and he tasted blood in his mouth. He tried to stand, but couldn't as his head swam. That's unfortunate, Moon. I have an aunt who only calls so she can talk. So even though she calls to talk to you and like, how's your day? It's just she's just waiting her time so she can talk about her issues. Name day I get. We have it in the calendars, like especially the calendars in Latin America usually have the saints on each of the days. So if you are named after a saint, usually the day of your birth, traditionally you are named after the saint of that day, but not always, not necessarily. If there is a saint on the calendar that has your name, even if that's not your birthday, I guess that could be considered your name day, as that's as close an equivalent as I can come up with. Sadly, those are toxic family members, and you can choose to be rid of them for the most part, but there are some that you just can't get rid of no matter how much you try. Well, you're taking away the attention from her, so she has to get sicker, right? The ogres in the front of the maddened horde had been out of blast range and continued on, not knowing the destruction that had just happened behind them. Such a charge could sunder an entire battle line with almost no losses, but on the confined middle of the bridge, only a few of the beasts could get to Walker at a time. He used this bottleneck to his advantage and braced himself as they came. The explosion might have broken a rib or two, but he knew he had to make it to the emissary before he could escape. He clenched his fists and charged, meeting the ogres head on. A battle cry left his lips. Thanks for that follow, Volta. Why are you up so late, hun? Or is it up early? Did you already go sleepies and wake up really early? Very likely, right? I am a couple minutes away from finishing the stream, actually. A battle cry left his lips and he ducked his first punch, barreling into the ogres and throwing his first blow as they got into reach. caught in the magic of the Magnus waves. Steel-hardened fists smash into the torso of the first ogre, killing it outright as the punch pulverized bone and anything beneath with a strike. Magnus' force knocked others aside as it launched the ogre through its maddening skin. Lost in a killing frenzy, the others simply pressed on, stomping on the fallen, each one of the beasts straining to bring down the warrior for the pleasure of their masters and to ease the pain in their minds. Walker darted and swayed between the mass of bodies, delivering brutal yet surgical blows to the gang that surrounded him. Knees, elbows, and other joints were hammered into paste as he was stopping their press. When possessed by such violence, Walker did not concern himself with small wounds or honorable blows. Each strike was intended to violently break bones and end lives. I'm going to call this a stopping point for chapter 7, and we'll continue Saturday. There won't be interruption of pictures and unboxing, so we should get through more of the book next Saturday, assuming my voice holds. I'm hoping. And it's almost battle time. Let's see who is on that we could raid. Oh, our stream raider's friend, Shell Smiley, is playing Phasmophobia. She is an option. There's also For the Win, who I usually raid. She's doing her Sunday morning music. Usually, since Scruffy raided with you guys music, I like to take you over to do music to music. Our other stream writer's friend, Latina is on. Oh, and Albert will probably like this. I think I'll go here because I've never raided him before, and we want to make new friends. So we're gonna raid LDS John Boy. He is a stream writer friend. He is currently playing God of War and having a very fun time. And he is also someone who plays Grounded. So I'm hoping that we can play Grounded together in the future. Yeah, okay. That settles it. We're gonna go say hello to LDS John Boy after the battle. Don't get too ahead of yourself, Alexis. There you go. Alright. Thank you, Halbert. Please go to sleep after this. I'm done. The Burly Beardo. Moonlight Baby, Seraphine, RB, you also need to go to sleep, sir. And Paladin Prime, how appropriate. I'm reading about a Spartan Paladin. Okay. I will give us haste here, and hopefully our Templar can heal everybody quickly. Hopefully the numbers are in our favor. Seem to be. They're coming down. Look at that. I got 25 kills. I got more assists, right? Yeah, so I have just one more buffing assist that I'm needing. Alright, let's see if the skin gods have been kind to us. No skins. I got some gladiator scrolls. And Moon, you get some monies. And Halbert, you got some paladin scrolls. Let's see. What more scrolls do we get? Another tank scrolls. Okay. And let's roll the giveaway. So Moon and RB, only two to enter. So you have a good chance of getting it. Congratulations, Moon. You have won one of the skins. So let me know of the three. I can't remember. I think I might have given you the rogue last time. So let me know if you still don't have the buster or the pizza mage and you want one or the other. And I will whisper the code to you off screen, off stream. All right, let's start the raid calls. So if you don't have my emotes, grab that one. If you are subbed and have the emotes, you can grab these and you have my turtle and my pineapple and my raid tiki. There we go. Alright, and let's start the raid to LDS John Boy. So thank you so much for being on my stream today. Thank you so much, Scruffy, for the raid, and for Tactical Nugs and Volta and Stinger follows. It's nice getting to see you and see you if you're still here, and Piglet for following for that. Thanks for that stretch. Moonlight, I need to stretch and then go sleep, you guys, after I drop you guys off at John Boy's. So I will catch you next Saturday. I'm not sure if I'm gonna have guests next Saturday, but we shall see. Until then, I hope you have a good rest of your weekend, Sunday, and I'll catch you guys there. Bye.